Hi, welcome to a different kind of video than what I usually do, which is weird, poorly timed gaming videos. But anyway, um, I wanted to make a quick drawing tutorial. Now, I'm not the most skilled in the world. I've only been let's see. I mean, I've been drawing all my life. I guess like most people, you grow up and you draw a bit, but I've only really been drawing seriously for about 3 or 4 years or so. Yeah, but yeah, I wanted to give a few anatomy tips to anyone that's super new. If anyone that's experienced is probably familiar with all of this and is probably better than me at it anyway, but right here I'm gonna make a crude line. I'm gonna make a male and a female box for our anatomy, since male and female anatomy are two different what's it saying? Two different things. But anyway, we'll start off with male since that's the simpler one. We can take, actually I'll do this on a different layer. Yeah, alright, so if a common thing you'll hear is making things about 8 heads high. I don't really pay attention to that, but that's something you want to follow for accuracy's sake. But how I learned to draw simple anatomies with stick figures, so not just simple. Obviously you have the stick figure like that. It's similar. You got the thing, but you draw all the joints. So one thing I'd like to say is to keep your lines kind of flowy, because actually here's what we'll do. We'll get two of these up, and actually no, I'll draw a completely different one for that. Okay, so I'll draw just a simple idle standing pose. And one thing you can do is add the rib cage, and you can kind of shape your exterior based on, do a circle for the hips. That's what I like to do. You can add the joints for the legs, kind of bring down to the thighs. Then I'm just doing this kind of crudely, but yeah, so the shoulder joints and the elbow joints, and kind of want to keep things rounded. And you don't need to keep the anatomy completely perfect, so it can look a bit awkward. So this looks a bit awkward. It looks a bit thick around the chest and the legs, but I'll talk about that in a second. So you can draw quick hands. Yeah, so yeah, we got some hands, and that's fine. That looks decent looking standing pose. Oops, I made a vector layer. Oh, and the software that I'm using is Clip Studio Paint. There's you can get a free trial for this if you want, but I'll leave some free software in the description, there's one advanced one, well, relatively advanced, and then there's another one that'll put in there. 2 free software, one that's kind of simple, one that's a bit advanced, if depending on which one, and also leave a link to Clip Studio, but you do have to pay for Clip Studio. Now, one thing, like I mentioned before, that you want to keep your lines pretty flowy is if I make him stiff and rigid, do another standing pose, and yeah, so he looks a bit stiff, doesn't he? So he doesn't look very dynamic. He's pretty stiff. Yeah, so what I'd suggest is keeping your wrist nice and loose when you draw. So instead of having, say, this, you can have lines like this where it kind of flows. So we'll go into simple female anatomy. So same sort of thing, spine. Now, one thing you want to keep in mind is that with most females, the shoulders are shorter than the hips. So you kind of want to draw the hip line a bit wider than the shoulders. So you can stretch it out. This is a bit of an exaggeration, but it can show. And that's another thing with hips. Actually, I'll draw another thing here. So say we have the hips here. Actually, I'll draw rib cage, spine, some wide hips. All right. So say you're drawing this with females. Say, this is the chest, so we got the breasts, but with this area here, what I like to do is make a kind of a triangle shape here and connect the legs to that. One thing you can do with males, on the other hand, is if you do the same thing, so you get rib cage, hips, skin. What you can do is, because with female waist and like that kind of area, it can go down like this, but with males it's a bit different. I like to make it a bit more rounded. So yes, it does look kind of like a penis, but I noticed that, with males having, a penis, what makes them male, it's a lot easier to get that in right away and then build on top of that. If for some reason you don't, then I usually make it flat. It's a bit difficult that way, so I'd suggest doing the same thing. So, rounded, doing that, and then getting your eraser and and erasing that out. It's a bit. I might, if anyone wants to, I'll go more into that into like a future video. But that's it for now. I just want to point out that that's usually a female thing. I mean, you can do this on a male, but I noticed when you do that, it makes the male look feminine. So unless you want a feminine guy, then try and include the penis into the male anatomy. But yeah, anyway, I like to connect the thighs to the edges, not the edges, the sides of the triangle. Kind of build it along that. But I'm not the best at drawing wings, but this is how I do it. Yeah, women's arms are usually a lot skinnier than guys, so I usually draw them pretty skinny. Yeah, there we go. I definitely recommend trying to draw realistically. Like, a lot of people, you'll probably hear a lot that you should learn to draw more realistically before you, even if you want to draw stylistically, that you should draw realistic first. I don't think you need to quite do that. But I do recommend it. But I don't think, to make things kind of, I guess, simple, you don't need to draw realistically right away. So you don't need to, I don't think you need to, you know, make the circle jawline, you know, go into every 3D plane that's on the face. You know, I don't think you need to do all this. You don't need to, you know, study eyes and what they look like. You don't need to go into every single detail when starting out. I don't think that's something you need to do unless you actually want to draw realistic pictures. I think that drawing relatively realistic, so just learning how things connect. So, you know, you got the head and as the spine, as we showed before. But like in the human body, the spine goes behind the rib cage. So not through it. So drawing like this will probably be a bit, if you're drawing from the side, it might look a bit weird if you put the rib cage right here. But if you're, say, you know, drawing so we're kind of looking at him from here, then move it a bit off center so the spine's a bit behind the rib cage. You know, and you know, kind of, I guess the line's kind of like a collarbone. You know, the kind of, you can draw a ball, kind of like a socket for the arm, if you get what I mean. But anyway, some other important things to remember with anatomy is that if you want, say, okay, so I'll just draw a quick figure, not pay too much attention. Okay, so we got a small boy here, and say, okay, we want to make this guy a bit taller. It's a bit too short. What you don't want to do, so in this square, I'll have no, is what you don't want to do is extend the body to make him taller. Unless you stylistically want that, I would not suggest extending the body to make him taller, because it looks a bit awkward. But if you want to make someone taller, usually in humans, height-wise, I've noticed that generally we're all the same. Our torso size is generally pretty much the same height. So you can keep the body about the same height, but extend the legs, because that's usually what grows when somebody is taller. You'll notice that their legs are a lot more taller than yours, but generally torsos are pretty much the same height among everyone. So sorry about the kind of crude drawings, but the last thing I want to go into is another one with female anatomy. Is if you draw, say, female figure, and I'll reuse this one actually. So we'll draw a quick female. Actually, I'll redo that. That didn't come out how I wanted. Yeah, but I'm still getting the hang of things too. So, but I figured maybe learning from, if for beginners, learning from someone that's a bit closer to their skill set. So I'm nowhere near being a pro or whatnot, but I know a couple things that I'd like to let people know. But anyway, okay, so we got a female here. So I'll actually duplicate this 3 times. So we'll have one here, and one here. So what we're going to show is the different breast sizes. So usually you don't need to do much with small breasts. You can kind of just, look at it and say, just give the little indents to give the impression that there are indeed breasts on this person. That looks a bit awkward actually. But what you can do is you just draw circles that look like they're coming from the rib cage. So one thing I've learned is that with breasts, you want to put them on the sides. Well, not the sides, but like kind of curving around the rib cage, and it looks a lot better because the chest is rounded. It's a round object. What you don't want to do is think of it as instead of thinking of it as a ball, is if you think of it as like a plate, since that is not how a chest works. You don't want both of them right on the front because it looks a bit, it's not how chests work, and I've seen art styles that try and use that and it doesn't quite work. So yeah, so you kind of imagine the breast coming out, kind of, I guess, spilling out, because remember, breasts are indeed affected by gravity, as anime might have you not believe, but yeah, you can, having a bit of a hard time. Oh shit, that's not right. But yeah, generally for small breasts, you want to keep them rounded at the thing. So I'll give this a final go, and then I'll move on to the next size. Yeah, so imagine there's like a big ball of jelly, I guess, and these are 2 holes coming out of the rib cage that it's spilling out of. That's generally how breasts work. But anyway, if you removed, say, these lines, that's generally small breasts. I'm going to bigger breasts, so same thing, but make the holes a bit bigger. So more gelatin's going to spill out of these. So yeah, make sure to make them. One thing, like from before, why you want to keep your lines flowy instead of stiff is if you have breasts, this looks a lot better than this. That doesn't. That's some pointy boobs. You know, nobody wants pointy boobs. But yeah, that's about the medium breast size. But going to large, again, make the holes a bit bigger, and with bigger breasts becomes more drag, if you will, is, you know, they tend to sag a lot more, like so. And with the nipples, generally with the nipples, the smaller the boobs are, the higher up they are. So, you know, for small boobs, they're generally kind of perky, so they kind of sit higher. But the bigger they are, it means more the nipples become a lot lower. So I guess for an easy way to understand is if we take it like a side view, say, okay, so first we'll do like a small breast. So this is the front. So, you know, you can have a nipple here, but imagine, again, with the gelatin analogy, you know, we had the front is rolling out, so it's curving downwards instead of our small breast, which was just sticking out forward. It tends to roll down the more the bigger the breast gets. So, you know, have an even bigger breast. It just curves down more and more as the nipple gets lower. But anyway, so unless your character has a set of falsies, or they're wearing some sort of a suspension bra or whatnot, you're going to want to draw breasts like drooping downwards, like so. They're a bit crude, but that's okay. And unless they're wearing some sort of clothing, you can draw straight up circles if you wish. Still have them droop, have some semblance of drooping, since even with clothes on, most women will have drooping with their breasts. But anyway, last thing is going back to our kind of first few pictures is, like I said, they can kind of look, you know, a little bit awkward, considering I mean, I did make them quickly, but one thing I like to do is I like to do multiple sketching. So I believe what a lot of people call it is onion layering. So, you know, you look and you're like, okay, what looks awkward about this? You know, the legs look a bit awkward. The way the shoulders kind of attach is a bit weird on this side. The feet are kind of weird. You know, that's all fine. You can keep your original study, because with your main sketch, your original sketch, I don't think you need to fuss over it quite much. It's more about getting the pose and the shape, the general shape down. But once you can go into a cleanup sketch where you don't have to be completely clean. It's not lining, but you can do a bit more shaping with this. So I'll put a little thing for the penis there, and yeah, we can put in some more details, like say the belly button's here, nipples are here, and we can focus on our points that we deemed looked weird in the beginning. So shoulders usually are rounded, so we'll round it around. I think one of the problems was this spot here. Generally arms aren't that thick, and we'll connect it a little higher up, so closer to the actual joint. And that looks, can refine the hands a bit, but hands are a whole different ballpark. That's what I was looking for. Ballpark. What I was trying to say at the beginning, but anyway, so we can clean all this up. But yeah, anyway, that's generally my tips on anatomy. And, you know, once you kind of get a general idea of what realistic anatomy is like, so how things connect together, you can, you know, go into more, you know, you can stylize it a bit. You can manipulate what you like. So say, you know, you like long legs, you can, you know, take your stick figure, instead of, you know, having it realistically portioned, you can maybe put the hips up a bit and give them relatively long legs and have a much shorter body. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but you get the point. You can, once you get the basics of realistic drawing down, you can kind of manipulate it to your free will. But one style I'm kind of a big fan of is the if anyone knows the anime Panty and Stocking, they'll know what I mean. I'm a big fan of this style where the limbs get fatter. You know, the body's relatively short. It's got, you know, relatively long legs, and relatively long arms. But what they do with the limbs is they start them off short, and then they'll extend it into more of a fat arm. And same with the legs. It'll start off kind of like, you know, there, and then their foot gets kind of fatter, and it becomes this kind of flat foot kind of thing. But yeah, anyway, that's my tips on anatomy. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a like if this helped you a bit. I know I'm not the best at this, but I figured I'd give out my tips on drawing anatomy. I'm sure you've probably heard some of this before. A channel I definitely recommend if you want to look more into more realistic kind of anatomy, and especially being like flowy. I'll leave a link to this guy's channel. This is where this guy's like where I learned a lot of my stuff. Is this guy, Psychra or something, Psychrias, and he's a lot of what I've kind of learned my stuff from. So special thanks to him, I guess. But anyway, hope you enjoyed. Leave a like, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.